All right, the next thing we're going to tackle are these ceramic containers. We've got blue and white, little footed bowl here and a more round bowl here. And I'm just looking at my reference photo again. Because we're doing this loose, I'm not going to get a tiny little brush and try to draw in all these little designs. I'm going to stay with my size 4, which we use for the outline, which looks really big for this, but that will force you to keep this loose. I'm going to use cobalt blue. I think cobalt just makes a beautiful blue and white. These actual blue and white pieces are not that bright, but again, we look at what is the main color, it's blue. Is there a way to bump that up and make it brighter and more colorful? You don't necessarily want everything in your painting just a screaming bright color, but as you're thinking about ways to add more color to your painting, look at whatever the local color is and say, is there a way that I can enhance that and make a little more of a statement? And as I look at the blues that I have on my palette, the cobalt is definitely, when you compare cobalt to ultramarine, you can see just on the palette how much brighter it is. We don't want to go to a gray blue, we want to keep it fairly strong. So to do this, I'm just, again, going back to the same size 4 brush. I'm going to pull some of this blue off. Keep in mind that this band that's going around is in a curve. So I'm just going to, I'm not really sure how I'm going to do this yet. I haven't practiced this painting for you. Perhaps I should have, but I think I'm just going to leave it at that. It goes under the leaf. Then we've got some drawings here and there that go back. I'm just doing just a real random, I'm turning my brush. Again, if you have a brush that's got a real sharp edge to it, it's not going to give you this look. You need a brush that's real worn on the end. So I'm kind of just dabbing, turning my brush after I threaten you not to dab, and here I am. We could carry that on down to the bottom and just leave the bottom right there. We're going to leave that white and the rest of this will be blue. I'd like you to have some places that are darker than others. So get some that are the darker blue and some that are the lighter blue. Keep it super loose. Don't overthink it. You know, when we get to the end of this, and if you feel like, well, that doesn't look finished enough to me, you can always go back. But it's sort of hard to reclaim that loose, natural look once you've made something too tight. So for the white of the pot, we don't want to use pure white. I'm actually going to take our pure white, I'm going to take a tiny dab of the Naples yellow. Naples yellow is a great color just to soften up a white when you don't want just the stark white. See how that kind of gives it a creamy look? And I'm doing that the same as I did with the blue. I'm just dabbing it. Now, because that blue is still wet, it's contaminating my Naples yellow, so be careful of that. If you're working in oils, you'll have to be careful of that. One way to help with that is to make sure you've got enough paint on your brush. If you don't have much paint, when you put that brush down, it's just going to smear into the surrounding paint. All right, while we're here, let's go ahead and work on this one. And if you'll notice on this one, this is a little more in shadow, the whole container, except right at the top there's a little bit of highlight. If you use white to start out with, it doesn't leave you any place to go with your highlight. So I like to do things a little creamy, and you can always go back and add some white. So this white with a little yellow mixed into it is more colorful than if you just used white. And I hope you see that. I'm going to go ahead, and while I have this white, I'm going to put some in, this white and Naples yellow. In fact, I'm just going to put that down and then let the blue go on top of it. You could even let this dry if you wanted to, and then go back with the blue. You might prefer not to have that pink showing. You might want to exaggerate it. Whatever you want to do is fine. And there's a little foot. You know, just to make that blue so they look like different containers, I'm going to take my cobalt and my little blue violet, and I'm going to combine those and soften that up just a little bit. And let's see what we've got with that. I think that's kind of pretty and soft. So you might think, well, that just doesn't look like anything. Well, it kind of looks like this design, very loosely. Again, because it's so impressionistic, I'm not trying to do anything real detailed. Now it gets darker as it's at the bottom in the shadow. So even though you're doing things loosely and impressionistically, you've got to get your values right, or it's just not going to read correctly. I don't really like the way this is looking. I think this looks a lot better. This is looking a little messy. You know, one thing that I like to do in my videos when I screw something up, rather than editing it out, I want you to see it and kind of hear how I think through it. One of the things that will help you when you run into a problem is try to articulate what is it that bothers me about that. If you can frame some words around it, for example, that looks too busy to me. So the solution would be to simplify it. So I think I'm going to, in order to do that, I'm just going to, I might even just do the whole thing in the blue. There's a little blue leg right there. So let me try that first. I'm going to try some of this pure cobalt down at the bottom, get this a little darker. And then we can drop to this gray or blue as we come up to the top. It's mixing with the yellow underneath. I don't really mind that. We can always go back over it if you feel like it needs a second coat, or if it's just not suiting you. You don't have to keep that pink line. I think I'm going to just get rid of that. All right, I'm going to go back in. And, you know, when we get through, we're going to probably go back and tweak some things. I'm just trying to do elements at a time so that as you're going through this course, you can look at one element. If you want to look at silver, you don't have to look at the whole painting to get to that. So I'll probably tweak some things, but so I want to reserve the right to do that and go back in. I'm just darkening this up at the bottom, just again to show that this is in shadow. Trying to keep this soft, not any hard edges. I think I am going back over this one more time. There's so much of that cream showing through. Okay, so the same way that we did the clay pot, I think it could be more interesting to drop multiple colors in here, but keeping them the same value. So you think, all right, this is kind of in shadow. What else could we use? How about some dioxazine purple? And to keep the color harmony, here I've mixed dioxazine purple with this same blue violet. And let's just see what that does. And again, we're using the same colors multiple times. I'm going to drop in just the pure dioxazine down here at the bottom. Let that little leg be in purple. Up at the top, it could get a little lighter. I might take some of this light blue violet, put just a touch of white in there. And we can have that going along the top, where there was a little highlight here and there. So now you've got this simple little container, but you've got a variety of blues and purples in it. And that's just going to be more interesting when you get back from the painting than if you just use one color. I'm going to go ahead and dip in just some pure white. I'm going to put a little dash of white there, a little dash right there. I'm not going to fuss with it. I'm not going to keep messing with it. I'm going to go back in with this dark purple. I like what that's doing down here at the bottom. So let me say this. If you don't have some values in your painting that are dark enough, if everything's kind of a middle value, like if this pot had all been done in this value, it wouldn't look like it curved and it wouldn't look like it was in shadow. By getting some things dark enough, you're giving form and shape to it. You're giving more interest to it. It's just going to read a little better. I'm going to go ahead and drop some of this dioxazine purple into this blue and white base over here, just on the side, just to darken that up just a little bit. Okay? I think while I've got my paints out and we're talking about these two containers, I'm going to take my cobalt with some white in it. And I'm going to just put a little stroke right there. I'm going to put a little stroke or two right there. I think I'm going to reestablish the cobalt there in the middle, just the pure cobalt. It's going to get darker as it gets to this edge, lighter as it gets over here. That may look a little messy, but I think when you get back from it and you see the whole painting come together, it's going to read correctly. One thing I'm probably going to do at the end of the painting, because this is backlit, I'm going to exaggerate the halo around things. So I may go back over some of these pieces and really bump them up so you really feel like it's almost turning white around the edges. But we'll see. I'd like to go ahead and get the rest of the painting in. All right, that takes care of our little blue and white. I'm going to put a little more right there.